and Gozo, and welcome to Lovin Daily. We have a day full of news to share with you. I'm your host, Sam Vasallo, joined today by Tim Diacono. How are you, Tim?
Sam, how's it going? Quite a lot to discuss today.
Indeed. Let's go straight to the headlines. So, Malta confirms 78 new COVID-19 cases, a record in a single day. There are only 2 people allowed to visit dying patients at Malta Day in the latest hospital news. ADRIAN DELIA and Bernard GRECH both passed the PN due diligence test. A new pro-choice group made up of healthcare workers forms. And lastly, a nice story, a homeless Czech man creates stunning sandcastles in GÄDIRA Bay. Let's go right into it.
So, yes, straight off, Malta confirmed 78 new COVID-19 cases yesterday, which is the largest single-day rise since the start of the pandemic. A large chunk of these were from one care home in GÄDIRA. I think there was around 24. Meanwhile, unfortunately, an 86-year-old woman has become the 16th COVID patient to die this morning, while 22 more people have recovered. Now, the numbers don't look great at the moment in terms of, if you're just looking at it in terms of, if you're looking at it numerically, it is a pretty significant rise, and the virus got where it should never have got to in the first place, which is care homes. We've been hearing since the start that there's about the need to protect the most vulnerable, which are the elderly people, and yet it somehow managed to find its way inside one of them as well. However, the general attitude of the people, of the public, is way less fearful than it was back in March and April. So I don't know if you're noticing the same thing, Sam, but I'm not seeing the same sense of fear, the same calls for a national lockdown as there were back in March and April. There seems to be a general sense of widespread COVID fatigue. People are still out and about on the streets. Restaurants and bars are still packed. Enforcement of the regulations doesn't even seem to be, that stringent. And I think people are just getting, not just in Malta, but globally as well. A lot of people are just getting very tired of the situation and of the government imposing restrictions on their everyday freedoms and lives.
Indeed, I don't think we can call this a novel coronavirus anymore, 6 months ago it was all new to us, governments mandated lockdowns because they didn't know the severity of the situation, but now it's been with us for more than half a year. And, restrictions and total lockdowns is, I don't think, the way forward. I know that Israel has become the first country to impose a second lockdown nationwide, but it seems to be more of a kind of political tool rather than one to preserve public health. So, we in Malta, we publish COVID stats daily, and I think, frankly, maybe this has to change, or maybe we need a better breakdown of how these are going. Let's go to the next story. So yesterday we published a harrowing account of a daughter whose father is on his deathbed, to be informed that only 2 people will be allowed to visit him in Malta Day. So essentially this is one of the COVID-19 restrictions in hospital. She told us that it's going to be down to her or her brother, essentially, and their mother, who gets to see their father, take his last breaths in hospital. It's quite a sensitive and serious issue, This reminds me of when we were following the fathers-to-be scenario, where at first, they weren't allowed in the delivery room, and then they were, and they weren't allowed to go to the appointments, and then they were. And the thing is, no one is saying that they don't want to follow necessary, precautions like taking the COVID-19 test, but the fact that this always needs to come out into the media and then, things change or things don't, I think, frankly, needs to be thought out a bit more before. And I know that we had a bit of backlash from care workers, and healthcare workers, and, we have the utmost respect, but there also needs to be a balance for something so sensitive.
I think it's just unnecessarily cruel. At the end of the day, we're talking about someone who's approaching the end of his life, who's literally on his deathbed, and the authorities are denying his entire family, which is 3 people, to be by his side. They're saying only 2 of you can come, And at the end of the day, what difference does it make if it's 2 people or if it's 3 people in terms of COVID? These are a son and a daughter, one of whom, is facing the very real possibility of not, seeing their father as he dies, and that's something that's going to live with them throughout their lives, for sure. And I mean, surely there can be an element of flexibility involved in cases like this. And it's not the only one. There are other people who also said that they weren't allowed to be next to their loved ones on their deathbed, which is, I can only imagine just how heartbreaking something like that is, especially then when you see the lack of enforcement by police and by health officials on people out in the streets as well. So there seems to be a bit of a contradiction over there. Moving on, ADRIAN DELIA and Bernard GRECH have both officially passed the due diligence test ahead of the upcoming leadership election for the Nationalist Party, which has now officially been set to 3rd October. So this due diligence test was an examination by a panel of three professionals who looked over their financial situations to see whether they're both fit to run as leader. Now, the panel said they are, and both, Bernard. No, there was no surprise whatsoever. I mean, some people were suggesting that the panel might actually fail one of them. That was never going to happen, because the implications, would have been a panel of professionals literally forcing one candidate into the position of leader and refusing and blocking an election entirely, and that would have been extremely controversial and quite anti-democratic as well, actually extremely anti-democratic, and there was no way that they were going to forbid one of these candidates to contest. Well, now it's official. Both candidates have requested the publication of these reports, and ADRIAN DELIA is going one step further, saying that this shows that all the reports on his financial situations over the past years have proven to be lies, and now is the hour of the truth, the Siat al-Verità. What do you think, Sam?
I don't think we're going to get rid of ADRIAN DELIA just yet. I mean, again, no surprise that they've actually both passed the due diligence test. I look forward to seeing what comes of this election, and I wonder if the rumors of a general election will actually come true in light of the nationalists electing a potentially new leader. So moving on to the next story, one that I'm really happy to speak about. There's a new pro-choice group made up of healthcare workers that announced themselves yesterday. They're called Allied Healthcare for Choice, and they're essentially kind of like Doctors for Choice, but for anyone who's not a doctor. I mean, 2 years ago in Malta, may I remind you, we weren't even talking about abortion without, whispering. And now we have a full-blown pro-choice coalition made up of, professionals and healthcare workers. There's Doctors for Choice. Now there's Healthcare Alliance. There's a youth group.
Have they published their names yet?
They haven't published their names. I spoke to the founders. It's a very small group of healthcare professionals, and they're hoping to gather a bit more support before, following in the lead from Doctors for Choice and kind of publishing their faces and saying, like, look, here we are. We believe that women's reproductive rights are a human right, and that we need to stop their unnecessary suffering. The same day that they published, which I suppose was a strategic move, the pro-lifers celebrated their own commemorative day for the victims of abortion. And in fact, the auxiliary bishop, celebrated a whole mass and sent us a 2-page press release about, what they talked about in the mass. And he essentially said that the fight against abortion is the same as the fight against slavery, which is obviously a controversial statement. In fact, Doctors for Choice said, no, in fact, it is the fight to abolish these draconian laws, which is similar to the fight to abolish slavery. I don't know what you thought about this whole fiasco.
Well, I mean, what I find quite telling is, yes, obviously people are becoming bolder and speaking out about abortion, but the fact that a new lobby group has been set up and they're still too scared to publish their names just really shows how how taboo this topic is still in
And
Malta,
how hostile the environment
and
is.
how hostile the environment is, and how there's still quite a long way to go. At the end of the day, if people aren't going to put their names forward, it's going to be very difficult to lobby the authorities to do something, and to pressure and to you know, put your points of view across and debate. At the end of the day, people need to see that they're not alone in being in favor of abortion, and they're not just you know, single people here and there, but there is actually a movement, and we'll see how this goes. But it is certainly much stronger than it was up until even a few years ago. We'll have to wait and see how this...
It's been 24 hours, let's give them a chance.
Let's give them a chance. Moving on. So our final story of the day, it's quite a sweet one. Now, if you were walking through the beach of GİADIRA recently, you might have spotted a pretty beautiful sand castle. Now, you have to see it to believe it, because it's the most intricate sand castle I've ever seen. You know, we're talking drawbridges, moats, forts, even some small trees as well. And this is the work of a certain Petr Havel. He's a Czech homeless person, a drifter, who, you know, drifts around the world building sand castles across beaches around the world, and living off donations to travel from one place to the next, which is quite a lifestyle. And a Maltese person, Raquel Cicluna, you know, stumbled upon him, and she spoke to us, and she said that this man told her it took 10 to 14 days to build this particular sand castle, so quite a commitment. They've been going up to GİADIRA for 2 weeks, and obviously hopeful that the rains are going to come and you know, wash his entire creation away. But yes, I mean, it's a pretty beautiful sight, and I think Malta should be glad to have someone like Petr choosing to come here, right? And
I also heard that the heavy rains didn't completely destroy the sandcastle, so that's even better news.
Yes, it was quite a strong castle as well, and not even last night's rains could have completely destroyed it.
Lovely story. So be sure to follow all our socials of Lovin Malta for the latest news, videos, memes, and everything in between, and have a day full of lovin'.